Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X, Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to Monday's edition of the Movies TV Mad Daily. You will never see a deeper exploration of the Superman myth than from Smallville. Yes, today we're talking about how Smallville saved Superman. And a reboot, prequel about a character is looked on very cynically these days. It's looked on very cynically by me. In fact, when I heard that they were doing a Superboy TV show, that's how Smallville was described when it was announced, I said, no, I want an epic Superman movie, not another Superboy show. We got that in the 80s. So it was, to my surprise, one Sunday morning when I was hungover in the UK, channel hopping, should I say, using my remote control like a piano. And then the kind of synopsis comes up. Smallville. Isn't that where Clark Kent grew up? No way, there's only one Smallville. So I see Clark Kent, which is Tom Welling, and then I see a bald guy, Michael Rosenbaum. I think it's the middle of the pilot. So I'm watching it, and it's charming, and it's intriguing. And Clark's obviously saved Lex Luthor's life because I missed the first bit. And obviously I had to buy the box set in the end to kind of watch the rerun the next week or however they did it. I think Smallville used to air on a Tuesday at 6:10 on Channel 4, the first series. And I think they used to repeat it on a Sunday afternoon on T4. Do you remember T4? Teen 4? I think that's how I used to view Smallville in its very first year. Then that was one of my times where I moved to Cyprus, didn't have access to season 2 or 3. I missed both seasons. Come back and binged them on DVD box set. And wow. So today we are going to talk about how Smallville saved Superman. Even from my perspective, I fell in love with Superman, as you all know, through the 1978 Christopher Reeve Dick Donner movie. But as the years went on, because there was no other Superman media, there was, but it wasn't anything that inspired me. The Lois and Clark show wasn't for me. I know a lot of you that really like that show. It wasn't for me. So the flame in my heart was going out for Superman. I still loved him, but it wasn't as burning bright as it once was when I was a kid. But once Smallville came along, I became obsessed with Superman again. It reinvigorated my love for Superman. But not just that. It educated me about DC. I didn't know there was a Green Arrow. I didn't know about DC Comics prior to Smallville. I didn't know what DC Comics fucking was. I was introduced to Superman through the 1978 movie. I didn't know. That's the honest truth, everyone. It was Smallville that educated me about all these smaller grade Z, B, DEs, DC characters. I knew Superman, I knew Batman, I knew Wonder Woman. But I only knew Wonder Woman from the Linda Carter TV show. Smallville literally taught me everything about comics that I learned. And this is one of the ways it saved Superman as well. Because people watching that show, because it was done in the premise of a Beverly Hills 90210, a Dawson's Creek. It also had, in its first season, very X-Files vibes, because Mark Snow composed the first 5 seasons of Smallville. He composed X-Files, the entirety of X-Files. So you had that X-Files vibe as well. We've discussed that before as well. So Smallville had a lot of inspirations. For many years, there was discussions about Superman not being relatable to younger audiences. But here, in this little teen TV show about a pre-Superman story, a pre-Superman Clark Kent, a teenage Clark Kent, all of a sudden, Superman became relatable. They took him out of the costume and revealed his soul. And the decision that really changed everything was have Lex Luthor live in Smallville as a slightly, older young man who becomes friends with Clark. But they're fated to become enemies. What a fucking genius premise that was. That was the key, I believe, to making Smallville successful. Casting people like Annette O'Toole and John Schneider as Mar and Pa Kent was very, very vital, and the writing for them was absolutely excellent. Obviously, casting Michael Rosenbaum as Lex Luthor, the definitive Lex Luthor, if you ask me. Everyone has their opinions on this. Everyone has their favourites, but I think if you ask most people, it's Michael Rosenbaum. For 7 seasons, we saw him grow into this role. For 7 seasons, we saw him play the amiable, nice Lex, then grow into the iconic, evil, megalomaniac Lex Luthor. Rosenbaum played all the versions, the good Lex, and then the Lex that we know and love. And he did it fucking convincingly. We saw it in season 6 where we had this rise of Lex Luthor. But season 7, the final block of season 7, he was absolutely, totally Lex Luthor going after Superman as he has been doing for decades in the comics, movies, and other TV media and film media. It was absolutely the hero-villain dynamic. Lex discovers a way to control Clark, and he's looking for the puzzle to put it together. He doesn't know that Clark is this mystical traveller, because Smallville had this kind of origin story, this legacy of Veritas, this secret group run by Lex Luthor's father, Lionel, played by the enigmatic John Glover. There was no Lex Luthor's father in the comics. I mean, Lex references his father in Superman 78, but before Smallville, we never knew who Lex Luthor's father is. And of course, it's clever because we've got Lex Luthor, 2 L's, Lana Lang, 2 L's, Lois Lane, 2 L's, so we had Lionel Luthor, 2 L's. They got it. Smallville got it. Whether our Miles, the creators of Smallville, were Superman fans prior, they did their research. Their writers did their research so they could understand the core of Superman. Now, there was a lot of complaints about breaking canon on Smallville. It was absolutely clear that Smallville was an Elseworld story, and I got that from day one. You can't have Lex Luthor in Smallville while Clark's growing up and being friends with Clark. You can't have a young Clark Kent fighting, Bizarro and Darkseid and Doomsday before he even puts the costume on and say it's not an Elseworld. You can't have a character like Chloe, who was so important to Clark, who's Lois Lane's cousin, and not say it's an Elseworld story. They did so many different things, but Smallville changed the game. It saved Superman in every way possible. It made him relatable. There was always that argument that he's not relatable. Just look, since Superman 78, Superman 2 was hugely successful, big production problems, but hugely successful, not as successful as Superman 78. Superman 3, I would say, was not divisive, but made 100 million at the box office, which was quite good at that time, but not as good as the previous 2 movies. Some people hated it, some people loved it. Superman 4 was a disaster. Superman Returns, I suppose you'd have to call it an underachievement in the box office. 250 million spent on the movie, barely 400 million made, so I suppose they broke even in the end with not many profits there. Wasn't great, not what they wanted. Man of Steel was also divisive. Some people loved it, some people hated it. So you can see that since Superman 2, really, there's been a problem with movies and Superman. Now, Lois and Clark, with Terry Hatcher and Dean Cain, was beloved. Not by me, but it was beloved. I respect that. Superman and Lois is beloved by a cult audience. The Snyderverse, Man of Steel, was beloved by a cult audience. But no one since, really since Superman 78 was able to do something to make him relatable. Until Smallville came along. Because you can bet your bottom dollar that Smallville is just as relatable as Superman 78. For me, it's up there as my favourite joint live-action Superman adaptation, up there with Superman 78. But what was very interesting about Smallville, and this is the key to making Superman relatable on the show, was that they made Clark Kent, teenage Clark Kent, into Peter Parker. He had Peter Parker problems. Not in terms of getting a job, he was still at high school, but in terms of dealing with the Luthors, who are basically Norman and Harry Osborn. Let's be honest. I mean, Lex in the end becomes Lex, and they don't duck those issues, and I'm very grateful for that. But he really is Harry Osborn in the early seasons, and Lionel Luthor is Norman Osborn. It's all there. It's all there. And John Glover's performance is up there with Willem Dafoe's performance in the first Spider-Man movie as well. I mean, I may even dare to say it's better than Bill's performance. And Willem Dafoe is one of my favourite actors, don't get it twisted. He's a great Norman Osborn. I'm not trying to, disrespect what people love. But John Glover, if you watch Smallville and was something utterly special. What Smallville had was timing and concept. They were brave. They took an existing idea and they modernized it. They contemporized it. I think in a lot of ways, if Smallville gets released now, I think it's going to be very controversial. Everyone's tired of prequels and sequels and, superheroes in general, I think. And I think it wouldn't be the right time now. But in 2001, just after 9/11, the world needed a hero. And as I say, Smallville took Superman out of the costume. The costume doesn't make us the hero. That's why I didn't take it so deep when James Gunn revealed his design for the Superman costume that David Corenswet was wearing. Because I think there's more to Superman than the costume. I don't hate the costume, I don't love it. We've been there, haven't we? We'll get a closer look at it and we'll discuss it again on this channel. Honestly. That's what this channel's about. Honesty of opinion. So, Smallville didn't have the costume, but he's still Superman. He's not Superman yet, literally, but he's got the powers. He's got the personality. He's got the character qualities. He's pure-hearted. But Tom Welling, who was cast as Clark Kent and played him for a decade, had so many great opportunities as an actor to take this character in places that Christopher Reeve, Dean Cain, Brandon Routh, Tyler Hoechlin, and anyone else who's ever played the character, George Reeves, hasn't had the opportunity. Clark being on Red K was a great opportunity. Ultraman Clark in season 10 was a great opportunity for Tom as an actor to stretch those acting muscles. And oh boy, did he. Because Tom was a very raw actor when he first came into Smallville. But what they did, they brought in experienced actors, as Alan Miles, the showrunner, creator, said, to protect Tom. And that they did. Because there was an inexperienced cast there, but there was also an experienced cast there. Alison Mack was inexperienced. Tom Welling was inexperienced. Sam Jones III was inexperienced. Christine Krug, who played Lana, was inexperienced. But I think Christine had a lot of charm. And she looked like no other girl I'd ever seen. She had this unique look and these unique features. But she was very charming. And she was a great Lana Lang. I think when we think of Lana Lang, I don't think we're going to think of the actress in Superman and Lois, who's doing a great job. We're going to think of Christine Krug. I think she really put a stamp on that character. I think Michael Rosenbaum really put a stamp on Lex Luthor. Tom Welling put a stamp on Clark Kent. He's, when you look at the favourite Superman list, Tom Welling is very, 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 very high. And there's a reason. Because he was Superman for a generation. Tom refused to wear the costume, ever. It was very controversial in the finale that he never physically put on the top. We saw him in a distance, becoming Superman with the costume using CGI, and even when he pulls the shirt open, that's CGI. Tom never physically put a costume on. So it's very, very interesting. Now, some on the production said that he did it because he believed Superman should never be on Smallville. So when you see him on Smallville, he's he's at a distance, right? Or at the end, I suppose he's there when he's pulling the shirt open. So the problem was with Smallville, the showrunner creators were driven off the show, the production, by the CW network. They had fallen out with Alan Miles. So their vision had gone from the beginning of season 8. But they did finish off their story beautifully. Beautifully. In terms of not finishing Clark's story off, but finishing off Lex Luthor's story, finishing off the story of Lionel and Lex Luthor. And it was dark stuff. And it brings me now to talking about my favourite Smallville episode ever, Descent. This episode does what most film series and TV shows never do. Keep a promise to the fans. From day one, it was pretty obvious that Lex Luthor would end up killing Lionel Luthor because it was there. It was all there. Lionel Luthor had tested his son. He had done dark, deep, cruel things to his son in terms of toughening him up. Lex found out that his grandparents were murdered by Lionel, so Lionel could get their business and money. That's how he became a billionaire. He murdered them in a tenement fire. So it was obvious Lex was fated to kill his father like Lionel Luthor had killed his parents. It was poetry. And Lionel Luthor in Smallville was absolutely what Lex Luthor was going to become. Lionel Luthor in Smallville was a foreshadowing of Lex Luthor's future. Every time they have a scene together, every time Lex sees his father, talks to his father, he's looking at the mirror image of his future. Isn't that fucking haunting? So when he murders him in Descent, he becomes his father. He becomes the Lex Luthor that we know and love. Isn't that fucking frightening? That's the moment. He truly becomes Lex and there's no hope. Throughout the season, he was seeing flashes of his good side. A child version of himself. A good version begging him to embrace Clark again as a friend, to take his good side. What does Lex say to his good side? This kid, played by a brilliant young actor. He says, "You make me weak." So in Descent, after he murders his father, he takes his good side and he burns him in the fireplace in the mansion. A literal killing his good side. Tell me, in Superman media, where Lex Luthor and Clark Kent have ever had this deep exploration. You couldn't have Todd Phillips doing a Luthor movie. Well, you could, but can anyone do what Goff, Miller and Rosenbaum did with Lex Luthor? It was a deep exploration on a channel aimed at young women and young kids and teenagers, the CW. It wasn't like it had a depth of audience, that it had an intellectual audience. But kids are clever and they like good stuff. And what you do by giving them good stuff like this, you teach them valuable life lessons. Because in Descent, it's a dark fucking episode. He's murdered his father, the Lex Luthor we knew in the pilot, that Clark Kent saved, the good Lex. Do you remember Lex when we all thought he was our friend? And he got on with Clark and he used to do Clark favours and help Clark and help Chloe. And he wasn't evil. Then you see, 7 seasons later, you see this guy murder his father in cold blood so he can get what's round his neck. The second key of Veritas that opens up the secret of the Traveller, a secret of controlling the Traveller, the secret of controlling Clark Kent, who one day will become Superman. Is there anything more Lex Luthor than that? Smallville got it, but more importantly, Michael Rosenbaum, the actor who embodied Lex Luthor for 7 seasons in the series finale, got it. They all got who Superman is and they all got who Clark Kent was. Repeatedly, Clark would feel guilty for people who died, protecting his secret. It chokes me up. His father took on his powers to go to Metropolis and bring him back to Smallville, because Clark was on red kryptonite, and when he's on that, in the show, he loses his inhibitions and he gets very, very bad, nearly even evil and very dangerous. That gave Jonathan heart problems, which eventually killed him. Then we have an amazing episode in season 7, but before we get to that episode, we should talk about the greatest guest star in Smallville history, Sir Christopher Reeve, in the episode Rosetta. Again, this is Smallville beating anything you've ever seen in Superman media. This was the greatest actor, the greatest man, the most genuine, kindness man, talented man to ever play Superman. We all loved him. He's there in a chair, he can barely breathe, and he's killing it. He's sitting behind a desk in an observatory telling Clark where he's from. And Reeve delivers an excellent performance, everyone. Was I the only one when we first saw that episode that fucking cried buckets and watched it again and again and again? But that episode goes beyond Christopher Reeve, everyone. Because Gotham Miller wrote a great script. It's what happens afterwards. In the storm cellar, when they're standing by the ship, and Clark puts the heart in the ship in, and he reads his father, Jor-El, saying that he was sent to Earth to conquer. And Clark doesn't know what he's going to do. And Jonathan says, you were sent, you're here for good. You're my son. And as Jonathan hugs Clark, you can see the doubtful expression in Jonathan's face. It's compelling. It's amazing. No one has ever explored my hero and his supporting characters as deeply as Smallville did. Gina Holden guest starred in a season 7 episode playing Christopher Reeve, Dr. Virgil Swan's daughter, Patricia Swan. And she's got this necklace around her, which has the key, one of the keys that holds the secret, Veritas. Veritas was this group started by Lionel Luthor because, Dr. Virgil Swan was part of that group and prophesied that the Traveller was coming and they were supposed to protect the Traveller. And if he was a threat, there was a way of controlling him. So that was the whole myth. So Patricia comes back to Smallville. Lex and her knew each other as kids. She gives Clark the Veritas journals. That explains everything about Clark. But Lex murders Patricia Swan. This was the moment for many fans, including me, that we had lost our best friend. Lex Luthor was like our best friend in the early seasons of Smallville. Even though he was Lex Luthor, that's the power of this performance and the writing. I remember standing outside after that episode, smoking 3 or 4 cigarettes. I was crying. It was deep. It hit deep. That's what entertainment used to be, boys and girls. That's what it used to be. Not anymore, though. Smallville was very special, as I say. But not only is this the deepest exploration of Clark Kent, Lex Luthor, Jonathan Kent. Martha Kent didn't really get much, but we got to know her a little bit at the very least. But the exploration of his teen angst relationship with Lana Lang, which we'd never seen properly before. And then from seasons 8 to 10, we got the full kind of exploration of the Lois Lane, Clark Kent, kind of Superman dynamic. As Clark started working from season 8 to 10 in the Daily Planet. They formed a pre-Superman Justice League with Green Arrow. We got to meet Hawkman, Martian Manhunter, Impulse, which is a version of The Flash, Aquaman. The show did everything. They didn't leave one stone unturned. So as I say, without Superman 78, this is the greatest adaptation. And you're going to say to me, but Mick, what about the weak Smallville episodes? When a network orders a series, they used to order like 20, 24 episodes. So it's very difficult. You have to have the weaker episodes, some of the silly episodes, right? And you put up with them. Some of the episodes have lots of plot holes, of course. But the stuff that they needed to do to make this a great exploration of Superman and his supporting characters worked. Some of the villains they brought in didn't work. The Doomsday thing, people were conflicted over that. I think Davis Bloom was more successful than actual Doomsday, but it was too ambitious for the budget that they had. Darkseid was way too ambitious for the budget that they had. I think the idea of everyone having darkness because of Darkseid kind of infecting everyone with darkness was a good idea, but when it came to Darkseid himself physically, they didn't have the budget. And that's why they did Darkseid Lionel, which was their biggest mistake in the series finale. But ultimately, Smallville, its production, everyone who worked on it had their hearts in the right place. They wanted to deliver us something special. The actors, the production designers, the grips, the gaffers, everyone. You know, Mark Snow and Louis Fibre, who did the music. Mark composed the music, as I said earlier, from seasons 1 to 5. And Louis Fibre did it from seasons 5 to 10. And his music was even better than Mark Snow's, if that's possible. Smallville was, I suppose, something that spoiled us as Superman fans. But what Smallville did was create new fans. The young people who came into that pilot, 7 million viewers on the WB. Before it was the CW, it was the Warner Brothers channel. And it had the ability to attract more viewers. The CW wasn't able to get that kind of those viewers. So 7 million people, many who had never picked up a comic, kids, never picking up a comic, watched that Smallville pilot, and they were invested in Clark Kent, Lex Luthor, Chloe Sullivan, Pete Ross, Lana Lang, the Kents. It was all there. The meteor shower. What's this mystery meteor? What are these meteors? Why are they making people mutants? What's going on? That's another great success of the show, and a lot of people won't agree with this because they hate the Freak of the Week. But they made Kryptonite, Superman's famous weakness, a character in the show. In fact, another genius idea was Kryptonite, the meteor shower, the Kryptonite meteor shower making Lex Luthor bald. Because there's a reason, which means in the show he doesn't get sick. The Kryptonite, the meteor shower, did something to Lex. It didn't make him a mutant, but it affected him. He's affected by Kryptonite. And I always said they should probably have only done 5 seasons of Smallville and then another 5 seasons of a Superman show called Metropolis, which is what most of us wanted, because using the history of Smallville in a Superman television show with the same actors, the same producers, the same people would have been utterly powerful, and I think that was an opportunity missed. In a way, seasons 8 to 10 are again him in Metropolis, kind of being Superman, but not being Superman in terms of the, in terms of the blur. In season 8, it's the red and blue blur. When Jimmy dies, murdered by Davis Bloom Doomsday at the end of season 8, Clark goes into mourning and wears the long black Neo jacket trench coat and the black top with the S on it. And I think that is kind of his way of mourning. And in a way, it's a way of saying, oh, he's wearing the black like he did after, Superman came back from the dead. Because season 8, Superman isn't killed by Doomsday, but it's a metaphorical death. Clark tells Chloe at the end of the season, Clark Kent is dead. Because he wants to embrace it. For the first time, he wants to embrace his Kryptonian side. And he tries. But Clark's kind of getting everything upside down because he's not ready yet. And that's the whole idea of Smallville. That's why this character is interesting, because he's not ready yet. This is why Smallville's Superman is relatable, because he's not ready yet. He's learning. It's Superman Begins. Smallville lit the blue touch paper. Smallville changed the rules. There will never be a more contemporary look, an examination at Superman, Lex Luthor, and all those supporting Superman characters again. Yes, Superman and Lois is different. It's tried, but it's not as classic as Smallville. It hasn't done what Smallville did. I don't think anything will. I don't think Gunn's movie will be as iconic as Smallville was, or explore Lex Luthor like Smallville did. The truth is, a series has more time to explore these themes and these characters. But you can get it wrong as much as you can get it right. So Smallville, as I say, is one of my favourite Superman adaptations. because it truly was special. And I will never forget it. I'm rewatching the show at the moment. I'm about to watch the 150th anniversary episode, Apocalypse, another great achievement. That's an episode where Clark is put in a world where he didn't exist, where nobody knows him. And it's a big game by Brainiac. Brainiac went to, basically went to Krypton and killed him as a baby. So he doesn't exist. He was never sent to Earth. So Clark has to undo this. But Clark's in a world where Lex Luthor is president, and basically Brainiac is in his head, and Lex is about to create nuclear Armageddon. So the show was able to do so many different things. And I think if you're a Smallville fan, you've been sitting here hopefully if you've been able to sit through me babbling on for half an hour, that all those great memories and the achievements of this show did. But if you're someone who's interested in these type of things, go and watch Smallville. I think you'll be hooked.